What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Another World. I'm here with our guest co-hosts, Mario and Chris, and today we're diving into the chilling realm of sleep paralysis with our special guest, Vicki Joy Anderson, who is the visionary author behind the riveting book called They Only Come Out at Night, exposing the dark weapon of sleep paralysis. And in her book, Vicki pulls back the curtain, challenging the oversimplified explanations from psychology and medicine that dismiss it as mere brain glitches or stress. Drawing from her own 3-decade nightmare of nightly terrors, plagued by paralyzing fear, shadowy creatures, and demonic visions stemming from unaddressed childhood trauma, Vicki argues that these experiences are far more sinister than what we think. So, Vicki, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so there's a lot to discuss here, but let's start with this. Can you give us some context on your background and what led you to write about sleep paralysis?
Yeah, absolutely. Never in a million did I think I'd be writing about stuff like this. I wanted to be a writer since I was 10 years old, maybe even earlier, because I think it went back to a poetry unit in first grade. However, I always wanted to be a writer, but I always thought that I would just be writing women's devotionals, poetry. I wanted to just write beautiful things that praised and glorified Jesus, that encouraged people. I did always have a heart to speak into people who are broken or people who have become disenfranchised with Christianity and had turned their back on God because of horrible things that had happened. I always just wanted to kind of be this person who used words to express beauty and to encourage and uplift and to glorify God. And I think that is what I'm doing, guys, ironically. But it's such a paradox because it's coming through such dark topics, which becomes perplexing and controversial to some believers who think we shouldn't be giving Satan or the demon world any attention whatsoever. And this book actually, I could say it came about by accident, but we know that it was probably providential. I wrote a couple articles on sleep paralysis for realdarknews.com. And it was in writing those two articles that I realized, you know what, I've had sleep paralysis my entire life, but I don't really know what it is. And I don't really know why it's happening. And I don't really know why it's happening to me and why it's happening so frequently. And so I had to go into in-depth prayer, research, and even fasting to get the answers to those questions. And after I wrote the articles, I realized there's more to this. And so I just continued to research. And I'll tell you the biggest surprise to me, because this initially was a quest for my own freedom and healing. Now that the book is out, and it's been out about 4 years, I cannot believe that this is actually a common, frequent phenomenon, and that not only have tens of thousands of people experienced this, I would say a good 25% of sleep paralysis sufferers are chronic sufferers who have had it from about 3 to 5 years old and had it their whole life, tormented by it. But another huge misconception about sleep paralysis is that it only happens to people who do drugs, play with Ouija boards, dabble in the occult, or you're a Christian with a whole bunch of unconfessed sin or a secret sin. And I will tell you that there's another category of people that get attacked, and they get attacked the worst. And that is the people that are on fire for Jesus Christ, who are committed to him. They're not just little pew warmers who worship Jesus 45 minutes to an hour, 1 day a week. If you are going to live a set apart, holy life, and you love Jesus with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and you want purpose, and you long for his coming, you might not get sleep paralysis, but you will be attacked. You will be on the radar. And so this idea, this sort of pie in the sky, head in the sand comment that I get every single week, numerous times on my social media. I'm a Christian, so this can't touch me. You know, it's what I call the MC Hammer gospel. Can't touch this, right? Like somehow, because I prayed a prayer, Jesus is going to do everything. He's going to block every bullet, and I can just put my feet up on the coffee table and grab my gaming console and just coast through the rest of my life. Guys, Paul wrote Ephesians 6:12, 30 to 50 years after Jesus died and rose from the dead. What business does this guy telling us that we are having war with archons and principalities in the heavenly places if Jesus took care of it all? We got to get our heads out of the sand, and we got to stop looking at believers that are going through extreme warfare and chalking it all off to they must be sinners, which is why they're under attack. It's a huge pet peeve of mine, guys.
Yeah. For our listeners, what is sleep paralysis? And then can you give us some of your stories that you experienced that are associated with it?
Sure. So first and foremost, we have to clarify that there's absolutely nothing supernatural or bizarre or weird or even malfunctioning about being paralyzed during certain phases of sleep. It's a created by God, baked into our physiology protective measure so that we're not acting out our dreams. We're not sleepwalking. We're not falling downstairs, walking into traffic, punching the person next to us. Sleepwalking and bedwetting, actually, are two of the things that occur when this paralytic function is disturbed. This is a interruption in that paralytic function. So I've always contended, I really don't like the phrase sleep paralysis. I don't know who came up with it. It is not a good term because everyone goes in and out of stages of paralysis when they sleep. And there's nothing spooky or weird about it whatsoever. What we're actually talking about when we say sleep paralysis is an attack or an episode that occurs when we are paralyzed. So it is basically something that occurs at a very opportune time because we're already vulnerable when we're asleep. We're vulnerable in the REM state when our dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is shut down. And now we're even more vulnerable because we're paralyzed in that state of sleep. So if the enemy wants to go after a Christian who's sober-minded and vigilant and isn't going to fall for all the nonsense when they're wide awake, they're not going to do the drinking and the drugs, and they're not going to do the pornography. They're not going to fall for going to the party and sleeping with someone before they're married. If you have a sober-minded, vigilant Christian, you have to get them when they are the most vulnerable. So the reason why sleep paralysis is extremely effective as a tactic of the enemy is for the three reasons I just stated. You're asleep, your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is shut down, and you're paralyzed. But the fourth whammy is that they typically target people in childhood. So you've got young, inexperienced children, and they are always children going through some sort of major trauma. So you've already got kids who are vulnerable, who are broken, who haven't necessarily built up the discernment, the knowledge, or the resilience to overcome the trauma in their life. And this doesn't just have to be the things that everybody goes to, guys. It doesn't have to be, sexual abuse. It doesn't have to be physical abuse. It can be you were given up for adoption, a parent passes away, anything tragic to that child. Grandma and grandpa dies, the house burns down, medical things like they're sick, so they're in the hospital all the time. They're left alone in the hospital, and there's all the needles and the strangers and the doctors. It can be any sort of trauma. It doesn't necessarily have to be dysfunction or abuse. And so now you've got children at 3 to 5 years old where the brain hasn't even developed yet. And this trauma is layering into their brain, and it is getting baked into their defense mechanisms, their survival tactics, their coping tactics. And so a lot of times what's actually happening is these children are being groomed in much the same way as when we talk about trauma-based mind control. This is a form of trauma-based mind control, because what you do is you get these kids who become so resilient to trauma, or so accustomed to trauma, or accustomed to coping with it. They're overcomers, they're strong, they're used to being in the foxhole. Or you get kids who have the ability to dissociate from high levels of trauma. You add to that it is baby boomers and Gen Xers, because the sleep paralysis of today, the sleep paralysis of the younger generations is much different. And the sleep paralysis that I experienced and that I write about was very diabolically foisted upon generations that were to be seen and not heard. You're the kid. You're not the star of the show. You don't complain. You don't want to go to school. You don't want to eat the rest of your vegetables. Tough. You're going to get a spanking, and you're going to get grounded if you don't. So these enemies, they know culturally who they're dealing with. And that's why the sleep paralysis agenda is changing, because the younger generation doesn't have the same amount of resilience that the older generations did, because we were told to ignore and deal with our trauma. But because, it's a double-edged sword. The younger generations have had the benefit of having their emotional needs taken seriously. They get to voice them. They get to have help with that. But the flip side of that is the enemy now can't come at them the same way, because unlike a Gen Xer, uh, a Gen Zer or a Gen Alpha, they're going to be on social media 2 seconds later telling the whole story, giving away the whole agenda. Guess what happened to me last night? Oh my gosh, it was so scary. It had red glowing eyes. You have to deal with the younger generation differently, and they are being dealt with differently. This is why you've got reality shifting and simulations and the back rooms and liminal spaces and the mall world. They get to explore these places, and it's exciting. And they're getting the younger generations with honey when they got the older generations with vinegar, right? Our generation, my generation, let's scare the crap out of these kids and put them in their place. Whereas with the younger generations, it's like, let's lure them in and show them how wonderful these other worlds and dimensions are. And then when they get hooked and addicted to the dopamine or the feeling special from all the things that are being revealed to them, once they can't get out of it, then we'll start to reveal what this agenda really is and what they've signed up for and what they've contracted. So it's a very complex, centuries, if not millennial old agenda. To me, it's a reversal of Genesis 6. Back in antediluvian days, they came down to us to teach us all this arcane knowledge and to change us from the image of God into their image. They got in big trouble for that. They realized, if we leave our first estate, we get into big trouble. So now they've reversed it. You come to us. We're going to pull you out of your body at night. We're going to bring you into our world. So now we're not culpable. I can't get in trouble. I didn't come down and share knowledge. You came up. You wanted it. And so it's a reversal, and they're luring now people into their terrain because they somehow think they're not going to be held accountable if they do it that way. It's the same agenda as when the giants and the watchers roamed the earth. It's just now they're getting us to come up to them instead of them coming down. But we've got two categories, guys. We've got the people that are seeking this out, and they're learning how to lucid dream and astral project and to get spirit guides. They want this. They see it as a gift. What sleep paralysis is, and what I call it is, instead of sleep paralysis, I call it an astral abduction. So you've got people who experience astral projection, and then you have people that experience astral abduction. And it's all about the will. There are people that desire to go there, so they go there on their own volition. And then you've got people who have no desire to go there, and they are pulled there against their will. And I use the phrase against their will very loosely, because in order to get pulled up there, some sort of agreement or permission was given.
Yeah.
Not necessarily by the 3-year-old or the 5-year-old. It could have been ancestral. It can be bloodline. It could be a parent or a guardian. It could be witchcraft. It could be military. It could be tech. There's ways that they dupe people into these things. So it's way more complicated, guys, than I ate the piece of pizza and went to bed. I read a book recently. John, I wish I could remember his last name. It begins with a D. He wrote this book, I believe, in the 18 or the 1900s. And the whole book was he wanted to disprove this silly notion that sleep paralysis was spiritual or demonic. Now, of course, they didn't have that phrase back then, so he wasn't calling it sleep paralysis. And he was a doctor, and the gist of his entire book was, if you don't sleep on your back and you don't drink beer or eat meat within an hour or two of going to bed, this will never happen to you again. It's all just this, you ate the cosmic piece of pizza, you slept on your back, all this nonsense. And it's more complicated than simple narcolepsy. And I believe in narcolepsy, so if there's people out there that have a legitimate sleeping disorder, I'm not saying I don't believe in it. And if you have a sleeping disorder, every single sleeping disorder is something demonic. But what I am telling you is that people with chronic sleep paralysis who've had it their whole life, they will develop narcolepsy and sleep disorders. Because what happens when you know this is going to happen to you every night? You start staying up later and later and later. Your melatonin gets all messed up. Your sleep, your circadian rhythm gets all messed up. This whole, like, I'm a night owl. You can come up with a cute name for it. But there's a lot of people out there that think, I'm going to beat this system. If I stay up past the witching hours, then they can't get me. And unfortunately, they can come anytime. Especially what's crazy about that theory, guys, is the more exhausted you are, the more vulnerable you are. So this is why people who take afternoon naps or who are jet lagged can have some of the worst sleep paralysis out there, because you're in those states of utter exhaustion. So I'm all over the map, you guys, and I know you asked me a second question, but before I give you examples, I'll let you guys jump in here.
So, one thing to go back just to touch on the eating pizza and the beer part, um, which was my diet like 30 years ago, but way past that now, thank God. um, but knowing, so I have a really good friend. Until they figured this out, they couldn't really kind of put their finger on it. Like, his kid at the time was like 7, 8 years old, and if he didn't go to the restroom before bed, um, he would have the worst nightmares until he got up, went to the restroom, and then went back to sleep. So, for people out there, and even for myself, like, how do you, or how would you guide people to know or discern between sort of a normal nightmare and an actual, like, attack,
Yes.
paralysis attack?
Yep. This is a great question, Chris. Thank you. Unfortunately, it is one of those things that until you've had both, it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
And it's not until you've experienced both that it becomes easier to make comparisons. So, here's a simple little analogy. If you've spent your entire life driving an automatic, it's really hard to explain to you what driving a manual is like, because it's just so different. And that's kind of what it's like. A regular nightmare is like driving a manual. You twist a key and you push a gas pedal, and that's basically all you need to know. And with the astral stuff, it's just kicked up a notch. Now all of a sudden you have to understand the clutch and an extra pedal, and you have to understand the RPMs and when to shift the gear and all that stuff. And so it's not until you become proficient at driving a clutch that you will then realize, oh, this is something vastly different than driving an automatic. So some of the things, and I want to make myself clear here. If one of these things is true, you're okay. I'm talking about several of these things are true most of the time, right? You will wake up absolutely exhausted. And this was something that you couldn't track. Like when I was a kid, I couldn't track it. But I did an experiment about 3 years ago. I don't like to have like electronics on in my room and stuff, but I slept with a Fitbit on for like a year, and I got all the sleep stats in the morning. So I had chronic fatigue. That was one of like the side effects of my lifelong sleep paralysis. I had chronic fatigue, and so it didn't matter what time I woke up, how late I slept in, I would wake up just absolutely groggy. It would take me a good 2 hours, not only to wake up, but to get pulled out of like a very depressed / paranoid mood, dread over the day. And after I woke up, I would be up about 3 to 5 hours, depending on the day. Did I have tests at school that day? Whatever. Depending on the day, I'd have 3 to 5 good hours before I was exhausted again. And I spent my entire junior high and high school career coming home from school and I would crash and I would sleep until dinner because I would be that tired. I would take like a 2-3 hour nap before, I was shot. And so I wore this Fitbit, and I realized that I was sleeping 9 to 11 hours a night. And the way that you track how much good, restful, restorative sleep you're getting is you combine your REM and your deep sleep cycles. So there's 4 sleep cycles every night. You go in and out of all 4. And so you basically take the 2 phases of sleep and you add them together. In an average 9 to 11 hour sleeping over the course of a year, I averaged never less, never more, 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes of combined REM and deep sleep out of 9 to 11 hours. So what that means is my prefrontal cortex, that's the part that's resting at night. When we say we're asleep, what's really resting is the part of our brain that's going 24 hours a day. And it's the higher reasoning. It's the decision making. It's what we do all of our higher learning with. And when that shuts off, we get rest. And when it doesn't shut off, we wake up exhausted because we are in foxhole mentality because we're not dreaming. Whether we realize it or not, whether you're lucid or not, something in your physiology understands you're in danger. And that prefrontal cortex flips on like a warning bell. And you are then able to navigate, hopefully, through your dreams or wake yourself up. But the downside of that is not only are you not getting sleep, you're usually waking up completely non-functioning. And there is a fear and a paranoia that lingers along with it. It's not just like, oh, I'm tired, I stayed up too late. That's one thing. There's other telltale signs. If you can access your memories, your life, your worldview, and your moral code in your dreams, that means that you have access to your consciousness. And it probably means that that prefrontal cortex is on. So if someone approaches you in a dream and says something crazy and you're like, no, I would never do that, because in the Bible, like if you're accessing all sorts of knowledge and information in your moral code, uh, that's an indication that you're not asleep. So rather than thinking like dream versus astral or asleep versus awake, I tend to think of it is my dorsolateral prefrontal cortex on or off? That's my way of defining it, because if it's on, I can wake up the next day and evaluate what I've dreamed, and there might not be anything demonic or scary or weird. But if I ascertain that my prefrontal cortex was on and I was lucid in that dream, lucid doesn't just mean I know I'm in a dream and I'm controlling it. Lucid means you have access. You're doing higher brain functioning. That's a tip off to me that even if I don't remember something, I'm still going to pray, because that is only going to switch on if my body somehow senses I'm in trouble. Another aspect of this is, and there's a lot of misinformation around this, they say you can't read in your dreams. This is why. Your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is shut down. So the part of your brain that you're accessing when you're reading is taking a nap. It's shut down. So sometimes you'll wake up and you'll remember that you had a dream that you were reading something, but you have no memory of what it was. Or a lot of times people, when they're dreaming, they can't dial a phone, like they can't get a number through. It's because that part of your brain is shut down. When you're in a dream and you can read, or you can dial a phone, or you're in trouble and a whole line of logic is in your head, like I'm going to do this, step 1, step 2, I'm going to look for a door. If there's no door, I'm going to look for a window, or I'm going to try to find a car. And if there's no keys in the car, I'm going to hotwire it. And when you're thinking like that in your dreams, or when in your dream you're talking, but you're fully aware of your inner monologue, these are indications that you are alert. You're not fully asleep. I had a dream once, very astral, and my whole personality was intact, where even my inner monologue had kind of my cynicism and my sarcasm. And in the dream, this old man was flattering me. And in my head, I'm like going, what's this guy trying to do? Does he think he's going to, like, this is totally fake. And I had this whole this conscience, like, warning me. I had my discernment. And then what was crazy, because this dream turned extremely sinister. And this guy ended up, his appearance didn't change, but his countenance changed. And when I brought up that I didn't want his special gifts, because I choose Jesus Christ and I don't need powers in this world or whatever, when I declined his offer, his appearance didn't change, but his countenance changed. And his eyes suddenly turned murderous. It was just his eyes that changed. And we turned a corner to this grand staircase, and he grabbed me by the neck, and I was off the ground. And my feet were kicking, and he was strangling me. And what was crazy, guys, is they say that when you're close to death or you're having an accident, your whole life will flash before your eyes. In this dream, I'm doing air quotes for your audience. In this dream, as this guy was choking me, I remember thinking, this is the way I die. This is it. This is the way I die. And my entire life flashed before my eyes, like millisecond, like bam, 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 bam. And I couldn't call on the name of Jesus because I had no air. And I closed my eyes and I was just resolved, like, I'm going to die. And when I woke up, or when I opened my eyes, it was still the man, but his face had morphed, and it was my godly, wonderful Christian mother who had passed away about 6 months earlier. And it was my mom's face, and she had hatred in her eyes, and it was my mom strangling me. And at that point, I was like, "Oh, just kill me now if that's all. If I got nothing left." It was so much despair and fear, and uh, he slipped. It. I started to say Jesus. I got one syllable out, and he grabbed me tighter, and he said, "Don't you dare say that name." And I just closed my eyes, and I was resolved that this was the end, because I didn't know it was a dream. And he slipped. He stumbled on the stairs, and he let go of me just long enough for me to say Jesus, and I woke up. And so some of the dreams are going to be that obvious. Not all of them will be. Another thing, and I know I'm taking so much time to answer this question, Chris, but the reason
Oh,
I'm
it's
doing it
good.
is because
It's
there's
good.
a lot of people that do have really bad nightmares, and I don't want everybody who has chronic nightmares to think that they're being pulled into the astral and covenanting with demons. I don't want to overplay this, but for the people that are interacting, um, you're going to see a lot of familiars in the dream. You're going to have a lot of people you love and trust showing up in the dreams. It's going to be mom, dad, spouse, college roommate, best friend. Um, there's going to be a lot of celebrities in your dream showing up, because they're trying to catch you off guard. They're not coming to you looking like a demon. They're coming to you as someone you love and trust, so you don't question what's happening. Or they're going to come to you in the form of a celebrity, so you're sort of starstruck and then you're caught off guard. They're going to be offering you food or drinks, or they're going to be luring you into buildings, because that's having you cross over a threshold. They might want you to sign things or agree to things. They might want you to repeat something after them or agree to something. And it could be something super stupid, like a beautiful celebrity comes to you and you're hanging out with them and you're backstage and you're laughing and they think you're hilarious and they build all this rapport with you. And then they say, "Hey, you want to hang out with me again?" "Yeah." "Are you sure?" "Yeah." "Okay, cool. Like, do you want to hang out tomorrow?" "Yeah." You just covenanted with this familiar disguised as the celebrity, right? If you refuse to eat or drink what they're offering you, they'll start to panic. You'll see it in their eyes, like, no, it's really good. No, really. And if you continue to refuse, the panic turns to anger, and then it becomes threats, like, you better eat this. Like, they'll change on you, that the personalities will shift. Anytime you have things coming to you in threes, so it's 3 women, or it's 3 alien grays, or it's 3 guys, I always tell people, if you're lucid and you can, look down and look up. Don't just look at where you are. A lot of times, if you look down or you look up, the set, the movie set gets revealed. You'll understand you're kind of on a set. So if you look down, you'll see the floorboards, or you'll see the Masonic checkerboard floor, or you'll see the pentagram. If you look up, you'll see that there's no ceiling. You'll see like interstellar space, or you'll see unusually high, like unnecessarily high ceilings. You'll see rafters. You'll see things in the rafters. Um, this stuff takes time. Because a lot of us, we're not aware of what we dream, and when we wake up, we don't take a lot of interest in it, or we don't remember a lot of it. And sometimes what I do when I wake up, just based on how I feel, I won't remember anything I've dreamed, but because of the way I feel, I know something's up. Like, I'll wake up and some thought will come through my head, and it will trigger some memory that causes me stress, anger, bitterness, hurt, rejection, and then it consumes you. And so what I do now, because I do find that as I get older, I remember less of what I dream, but I will wake up with a split second of something that gives me an impression that something wasn't right. And so I will pray and I'll cover it and I'll say, Jesus, if there's anything I need to remember, if I contracted or covenanted or made an agreement or a promise, or if I ate or drank something, or if I, you know, if there's anything I don't remember, bring it to mind. If I have to know it and confess it specifically, because the demons are so legalistic. And sometimes I'll just sit there and I will wait and wait and wait to see if something comes to me. If you're patient and you sit still and you actually wait, a lot of times something does come back. For me, as soon as I open my eyes, it's gone. It's like a snowflake. It melts. It's gone. So I'll wake up and before I open my eyes, I'll just stay in that spot and I'll pray. Sometimes nothing comes to me, but the next night when I go to sleep, upon going back to sleep, all of a sudden, bam, it'll get downloaded. No, I remember what I dreamt last night. Oh my goodness. Sometimes it'll get triggered during the day. Like I'll pray and nothing will come to me, but then someone will say something like, yeah, I heard this song on the radio. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this dream I had. So just because he doesn't reveal it to you right in that moment doesn't mean he won't reveal it to you. The thing that I'll end on this, guys, because I know I'm going on and on.
No,
it's good.
One of the things I tell people is when it says in the scripture that we're supposed to beware of our adversary, he's a prowling lion seeking someone to devour. Ephesians 6:12, as mentioned previously, that there are principalities and forces of darkness and wickedness and fallen angels in these heavenly places. And those things are higher than demons, guys. Those aren't as easy to shoo away. We don't just say, Jesus, help me, and they go away. If those things are coming after you, there's some sort of legal right to you. There's something ancestral. There's a bloodline thing. There's a contract. There's Freemasonry. There's military. There's something there. They're not going to just go, oh, okay, I'll let go of you. Like if you're in their legal jurisdiction, they're not just going to let go. Even if you wake up, they'll come back, right? We can't take this stuff lightly. What I tell people is that the demon world, they're not human beings that need their 8 hours of sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing in scripture that says that the demons clock out at 5 p.m. There's nothing in the Bible that says they cease to terrorize or torment or tempt us because we're asleep. They don't respect our awareness, right? They're coming at us 24/7. And I think subconsciously, we've always sort of just assumed as believers that we're to be sober-minded and vigilant while we're awake. And then we pray, now I lay me down to sleep, and we have sweet dreams. No, guys, this is a 24/7 attack. These things don't respect the fact that you're asleep and leave you alone and wait until your alarm goes off. And in fact, like I said at the very front of the show, if you are any sort of a threat to the kingdom, if you are any sort of usefulness to the ministry of the gospel, they will in fact wait until you fall asleep because that's their best chance of catching you off guard.
Vicki, I have a question. I'm trying to figure out how to word this correctly. But when you were talking about when you do experience these type of things, you're going to wake up exhausted. It kind of takes me back to those 1980s horror movies, Nightmare on Elm Street,
Yeah. Yep.
where it kind of depicts the same exact thing where they're the most vulnerable
Yep.
when they're exhausted and they try to stay awake. That's for entertainment purposes. But do you think that a lot of those writers of the movies, or even like I think you mentioned Stranger Things at one point on a podcast, do you think those are they're trying to inform us of some of this stuff?
Yes.
I know that we
Yes.
have biblical based,
Mocking
biblical
us is yeah.
right. I guess that's my question. Like there's stuff right there, but we don't take it as being something that's very, very serious.
for our spiritual life. So I guess
Yeah.
do we know how to depict fact over fiction, or does that make sense?
Yep, totally. All right, guys, I'm going to quote Bono for a second. Hate to do it, but there's a line. There's a line in Sunday, Bloody Sunday, uh, and it's true. We are immune when fact is fiction and TV a reality. There's a lot in that statement. We are immune because everything on the news is true and everything in Hollywood is fake. And I think not 100%, guys. There are things on the news that are true and there's things in Hollywood that are fictional, but I believe it's somewhat reversed because they know the way our brain works. We go into different brain waves when we are in truth-seeking, knowledge-seeking mode and when we're in entertainment mode. And so they've flipped the script on us. So when we're watching the news, we're sober-minded. And that's when we're getting all the garbage. And then we go to kick up our feet and be entertained with the movie. And we're in that nice, lulled to sleep, almost hypnotic brain state where we're not being sober-minded and vigilant. And then they're putting all this truth in plain sight and, mocking us and giving it away. So, interesting that you mentioned Freddy Krueger, because this is going to delve into a whole nother aspect of sleep paralysis that nobody wants to touch with a 10-foot pole. Now, this is the upshot. This is what they call in the business world the law of unintended consequences, right? The enemy is out there winning, right? He has got so much perversion and overt sexuality out there, and all of the twisting of the genders and all of just the illicit sex, the pornography, the masturbation. There's no taboo topics anymore. And because of 20, 30 years now of all these talk shows, the Jerry Springers and the Maury Povich and whatever his name is, we now have become so desensitized to hearing people talk about their sexual exploits and their perversions that we're at that place in the Old Testament where our culture now, we don't know how to blush. We can talk openly about anything. Back in my day when I was a kid, there would have been no such thing as a men's church group where all the guys got around and talked about their pornography issues. Like, you would never admit, it was, people still had shame over that. Nowadays, everybody goes every single Wednesday night and I watched it again. There's no shame in it even. And so the flip side to that, the law of unintended consequences, what the enemy might not have accounted for is now that no one gives it a second thought to talk overtly online for everyone in the world to see all these sexual things. The enemy has now blown the entire sleep paralysis agenda wide open. And people are now free to talk about what's really going on. Up until now, all we heard was, I woke up and I couldn't move. And there was something pressing on my chest and I saw red glowing eyes. It was scary. What's really going on with a lot of these people, and they can't talk about it, but now they can, is there is a massive sexual component to these experiences. Now, it doesn't mean 100% or every single time you have it. Are there people out there with no memory of that piece of it? Yup. Are there people out there who maybe had sleep paralysis one time and that wasn't a component? Yes. I'm speaking in the statistical majority here. Many people, and most of the emails that I get and the people that I talk to, when they get really comfortable and they really want freedom, they'll say, okay, I was holding back. Now I got to tell you the whole thing. And the reason why there's a sexual component, it's not just about getting people addicted to porn or getting them to fornicate or getting them to move away from Jesus. Like, those are all side effects of it, yes. The reason why sex is a component of this is because these are betrothal covenants. And what happens in the real world right after you say your nuptials, once you come into covenant with someone, it's consummated. And the reason why there is so frequently a sexual molestation or attack involved, sometimes it's willingly. There's some people that think that's great. But the reason why there's usually a sexual component to this is because the part of the dream that you likely don't remember, or you only remember a portion of, and chalk it off to a nightmare, is there has been some sort of covenant or agreement made, some sort of contract where you have unwittingly pledged yourself to this demon, to this entity, to this familiar, and then it's getting consummated. And now what happens when you consummate? Now you're in a legal agreement that you are bound to until death do you part. Death breaks betrothal covenants. This is how evangelical Christianity has completely dumbed down what salvation really is. We say you pray this prayer, Jesus comes into your heart, and then you spend the rest of your life pursuing holiness and getting sanctified and doing your best. What salvation really is, it's not just a prayer. What you're doing through baptism is you're symbolically being put into a grave, because according to Paul, in order to truly be betrothed to Christ, the old man dies. We're not dying to the old self just because it's a brand new start. We're dying to the old man because death breaks marriage contracts. We can't be married to two guys. There's not room in our hearts for Jesus and the devil. And if we have wittingly or unwittingly, through our choices, through our dreams, through our sin, spent our whole lives loyal and faithful and betrothed to the enemy of God, we have to die before we make a new proposal to Jesus. The old marriage has to be legally dissolved. And so the reason so much of this stuff is sexual is because it's an actual betrothal covenant being made in the dream state, in the astral. It is binding in the heavenly realm until Jesus comes and annuls that betrothal covenant. And this is why, Christians, if you're out there thinking, I'm genuinely a believer, I don't just go to church and give Jesus lip service, I'm a genuine believer, why am I getting attacked like this? I pray, I've asked for forgiveness, I'm confessing sins, I'm pursuing holiness, I've fasted over this, I've gotten rid of everything in my home that might be an open door. I can't shake this thing. Why? It's because there's a legal contract that can be easily annulled. But the problem that we have is nobody is going to do it, because when I talk like this, half the church gets cognitive dissonance and writes me off as a crazy person and continues having their nightmares and their spiritual warfare because they don't want to face that this might be what's going on. And you know what? I understand why they don't want to face it, because now you have to understand that your perfect little life and your picket fence and your wife and kids and your car and your little dog and all your plans and your vacation and your camper is a massive glittering, sparkling distraction from the battlefield we are all on, that we've completely dissociated from. And a lot of us don't want to think about the ramifications that we might be cannon fodder in the middle of a spiritual war between two dimensional armies. That's too much work. My life is comfortable here in America. I make good money and I got my video games and, got the cute girl, got the cute guy. Nobody wants to get drafted into the military. And that's what a sudden realization that these aren't just nightmares. This maybe isn't just a sleep disorder. This maybe isn't the beer and pizza. I have been targeted as an being in alliance with the enemy of the guy who has the scepter to the world right now. And a lot of people just aren't committed enough to religion to put that much on the line. We're supposed to lay our lives down for Christ and for one another. And I think the thing that is more scary about sleep paralysis, it's not the little demon with the glowing eyes or the shadow man. The scariest thing about sleep paralysis is the reality that your invisibility shield is not working. Those things see you and they're coming after you. And here's the deal, guys. It is so easy to make war with these things, but before you can make war with it, you have to come to the realization that this is really a reality. And most people, they can't go there.
Yeah. So that's I guess that's a natural question I have. So identify the problem, diagnose the problem. Is there a pathway to victory and freedom from sleep paralysis?
Absolutely. So there's a sliding scale for this, guys, because different people are pulled into this to different degrees and for different reasons, right? I have talked to people who have called me and we've prayed together one time. And they call me a year later and say it never came back. It's totally gone. And then there's other people where it'll go away for 3 weeks or a month. And then if that person comes under attack or under stress, or they reopen a door, it'll come back. Or there's people that will get the doors shut, but there's more than one door to identify. So that it's not that they're coming back, it's that all the doors haven't been shut. There's also the case where people figure it all out. They beat the matrix and they get it all buttoned up and they figure it out. But now they've enraged the higher level entities because let's say that person was a part of a bloodline and they're the first person to become a Christian and break the bloodline curse. Now you've really made somebody angry. So they might not have access to you through the sleep paralysis anymore, but they're going to throw everything at you to see how serious you are about this. When it tells us in Ephesians 6, 2-3 times, stand firm. When you've done everything, stand, keep standing. Like they're testing that now. Are you really going to stand your ground? So depending on why, if you have sleep paralysis because of childhood trauma, in addition to Jesus coming and assisting and casting these things out and helping you identify the doors that you need to close, you're going to have to do some real work in overcoming the trauma. So there's going to be having to face things you've dissociated from or didn't want to deal with or you've put under the carpet. There's maybe some bitterness or anger or unforgiveness you have to deal with. There might be some really evil people you have to forgive. There might be a lot of coping mechanisms that you developed through the years that you now need to repent of. Because a lot of times when we cope with things like this, there can be habits and patterns and addictions that cause a lot of problems in our life, and then we need to deal with that. If it is the result of military, Masonic, or occult bloodline type of things, if you're a survivor of ritual abuse, or you are a targeted individual, or you survived MK Ultra, if you are of a certain bloodline, if you have developed dissociative identity disorder and you have alters that need to be integrated, all of these things can be healed. But depending on how deep you're in and why you're in that deep, you have to realize that there is a lot of work that some of us have to put into it as well. For me, it wasn't very dramatic. For me, it was lots and lots of healing of childhood trauma from 15 years of surgeries, operations, bullying, being scared. Then I developed high anxiety because of that. And I didn't know how to control my anxiety. And I there was some arrested development in there because of some of that stuff. You got to deal with all that stuff. And but what I really, the message I really want people to hear right now, if you're a Christian right now and you're listening to this and you've never had any of this happen to you, you don't have a category in your brain for this. I hope that if someone ever comes to you, because more and more people are talking about this stuff now, I hope that when someone comes to you and says, I had sleep paralysis, that you will understand that sleep paralysis is the dandelion head. And if you follow the stem of that, there is a massive root system underneath that. People don't just have sleep paralysis. This idea that someone who suffers from sleep paralysis, you can just say, I'll just call in the name of Jesus and it'll all go away. It is not going to be that easy for some people because there's trauma involved. There is hidden contracts and covenants involved. There's bloodlines involved. There's sometimes covens involved. There is unforgiveness involved. There's massive rejection and brokenness. In many cases, there are unhealthy coping mechanisms or addictions that are exacerbating it. This little coffee cup answer, like the little cliches, that you get on the coffee cups, it's kind of like if someone tells you they miscarry a baby and you say, well, you can just get pregnant again. Like, you don't say that to someone who's going through the trauma of 9 months of dreaming and planning and decorating a nursery and picking out names and telling everyone and re-identifying from a wife to a mother. You don't just tell them, try again. And it's the same thing with sleep paralysis because people don't understand it. When you walk away saying, I had that once and I prayed for Jesus and it just went away, you're basically saying, I'm better than you are. I am holier than you are. I know something about the Bible you don't know. I have a intimate relationship with Jesus Christ that you must not have because he rescued me and not you. You have no idea how condescending, arrogant, and pretentious it is when you tell a trauma survivor that your magic word didn't fix them. We have to start caring for people more long term. Some of these people, you guys, I'm in my 50s and I'm still trying to learn about this. I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't have sleep paralysis anymore. These things aren't stupid enough to hold me down and all that. I'm not scared of that anymore. I'm past that part. But the dream abduction stuff, the lucid dreaming, the chronic fatigue, the constant pestering me in my sleep and trying to, and waking up and having to evaluate and all the warfare, like it's exhausting. And I have to just keep digging deeper. I have to constantly be asking God to search me and try me. Is there any unclean thing in me? Reveal to me the open doors. This isn't something that just goes away. And I don't want to discourage people. You can get rid of sleep paralysis. You absolutely can. But if you've had chronic sleep paralysis your entire life, it started at 3 to 5 years old and you're now 30, 40, 50. You guys, the thing that shocked me the most after my book came out, for the first year, almost everyone who contacted me and wanted help was in their 70s.
Wow.
And they had had it their whole life and never told a soul. So this is something that some people have been dealing with for decades. And I have yet to talk to someone where I start asking the questions. Do you have any Freemasonry in your family? Do you have any high-ranking military in your family? Do you have a maternal bloodline of practicing witches in your family? Were you ever sexually abused or molested by a family member? As you know, when I go through all of like the obvious, the low-lying fruit, there's always something horrific. No one just said, oh, I just had sleep paralysis all of a sudden at 3 years old. And the torment that comes with the sleep paralysis, the sexual grooming that comes with it. And I'll give you guys a little bit of insight. I have spoken to many men who have called me. When I do freedom encounters every week on the phone, I do Zoom calls and I have people on the call with me. It's not just one-on-one. I have had numerous men from teenage up into their 40s confess to me that the trauma in their life opened the door to the sleep paralysis, and the sleep paralysis became an early onset sexual awakening. I'm talking like 4 or 5 years old. And through all of the dreams and the fantasies and the invisible friends and all the things that go along with this, and the night terrors and the hat men and the entities. I don't want to get too explicit, but basically they were being groomed. And because it started so early and it had to escalate to continue to be exciting, they wound up absolutely in the throes of homosexuality. There are kids being groomed into perversion, homosexuality, gender confusion, fornication, pornography, because it's being introduced to them in their dreams explicitly night after night, starting between 3 and 5 years old. This isn't a one-off case. I hear it every week.
Jeez.
Mom and dad send off their homeschooled kids to college, and they can't figure out why it only took the public school system 1 semester for their kids to walk away from Jesus. It's because there's been things going on in their mind and heart that they kept secret. One guy I talked to who was telling me this story, I asked him, because he was raised in a Christian home, and I said, at any point before, during, or after puberty, like did you think this is dirty, this is gross, this is wrong, or this is a sin? And he thought about it for a long time. There was a pause. And he said, no. But I knew it was supposed to be kept secret. So we've got all of these very well-meaning Christians. And this is why Christians, we can't have our heads in the sand. We have to know our enemy. I think that was one of Sau's art of war things. If you don't know your enemy, you're not going to win a war. You can't strategize. So here's the deal. You can pull a TV out of your home. You can pull a computer out of your home. You can not let your kids have a cell phone. You can homeschool them. You can watch every movie along with them and discuss afterwards what was moral and immoral about the movie. You can shield them as much as you want. But these things still have access to your children because they have access to our minds and our thoughts. Whether they can read them or not, I don't know. I don't care. But I'll tell you, if my smart TV can figure out what I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure a demon can figure it out. We're not that complicated, and they've had thousands of years to observe us. They don't have to read our minds to figure out what works. We have a very limited number of things that we all spend our whole lives clamoring to obtain. There's a short list of things that they can offer us that most of us will fall for. And if they come at us early and they groom us and they trick us and they deceive us because we're children and we keep these things secret and we basically lead a double life until we're 18, and then mom and dad absolutely can't figure out, and it just destroys families. Then mom and dad spend, moms and dads call me crying. I failed as a parent. Now Satan's got them in misery and guilt and regret. It's an ugly thing. We have got to guard our thresholds and our homes and our families. And we've got to get back to this outmoded idea that the pastor isn't the head of your house. The pastor is not the spiritual leader of your home. The pastor is not the one to figure out all the problems in your marriage and with your kids. God appointed high priests of every home. And we've got a bunch of high priests in Christian homes that don't want to be high priests. And I'm just telling you guys, put down the gaming console. You are the high priest of your home. Your wife and your kids are getting attacked. And any door that you're opening through your sin, let me tell you, this is the way the enemy works. If you're the man of the home and you've got a bunch of secrets, the enemy's not going to retaliate by coming after you. He's going to come after the most vulnerable member of your household. Whether that's your mother-in-law with dementia who's living with you, or it's your 3-year-old. That's the way the enemy works. He's not going to pick a fight with someone his own size. If you open the door, the enemy will come in and he will instantly attach himself to the most vulnerable person in your house. And you likely won't figure out what's happening until it is too late. We've got to get back to sober-minded, vigilant housekeeping.
Amen.
The threshold is the altar of the home, the spiritual leader of the home. And this isn't to condemn women who are single moms. This isn't to make people feel guilty if they're single or they're not married or this isn't a condemnation for people. I'm only speaking to the people it applies to. If it doesn't apply to you, don't let the enemy make you feel condemned or ashamed. If you're a Christian and a husband and a father, there are responsibilities. And it's not just paying the bills and making sure all the doors are locked at night.
A lot of good stuff here. Thank you so much, Vicki. I know you talked about astral projection, and to me, in my brain, I think of like Peter Pan flying over the city skies, or The Matrix seems to be more of an applicable movie about, astral projection and moving from city to city. And is that something, that
Yeah.
fits into your description of what happens within sleep paralysis or astral projection?
Yeah. Yep. So I personally think the best 2 examples of movies that deal with astral projection is The Matrix and Wizard of Oz. And the color of the astral realm, and it doesn't mean that when you go there everything's that color. It's the energy, the aura of it. The color associated with the astral realm is green. So the Matrix, all the numbers that are green. Now, granted, anyone who remembers DOS and computing in the 80s, the numbers were green, right? You'll notice with Neo, the best scene is when he goes to see the Oracle. So Morpheus takes him to go and see the Oracle. This gives everything away. Morpheus is the Greek god of dreams. So just every time he sees Morpheus, you know he's in the dream state, because that's Morpheus. That's his spirit guide. But Morpheus isn't just the Greek god of dreaming. The Greek word Morpheus comes from our word. It's a word we've borrowed from the Greek. Morph. To change. Because when we are in that dream state, the astral dream state, this is why I say it's a kind of grooming and it's a kind of trauma-based mind control. Because the goal isn't just to scare you or just to tempt you. The goal is to change you. You are created in the image of God, and we need to change you into our image, so that when you have this transformational experience in the astral, you can then, in your waking life, be an influencer. And you can tell other people about this new age theosophical, religion of the astral realm. And you can write literature and make films and write books, and you can influence all of the, the 7 mountains of influence. We've got philosophy influenced by astral projectors. Science, medicine, Galen, the super surgeon of the 2nd century, astral projector. We've got authors, Lovecraft, Baum. We've got musicians, even to this day, Steve Vai talking about the astral experiences where his magnum opus song For the Love of God came from. And there's something really otherworldly about that song if you listen to it too. He flat out admits where it came from. So it's still going on today. So Morpheus wants to introduce Neo to the Oracle. And this is behind a closed door, over a threshold that a chosen one gets access to. Because not everybody gets to see the ascended masters in the astral realm. You might get a riffraff or a spirit guide, but he's getting escorted to the threshold of the Oracle. Morpheus even says to Neo, Neo, by the way, if you flip the letters around, they've just flipped around the letters. It's one. He's the one. That's right. O-N-E-N-E-O. It's that he's the chosen one, He gets brought to the threshold of the Oracle's apartment, and Morpheus says, I can't go any further. Morpheus can't step over the threshold. When you step over a threshold, this is biblical. My entire chapter 4 of my book is about threshold covenants. Sleep paralysis, it's a threshold covenant. That's why these entities usually appear at your bedroom door. They can't cross the threshold any more than Morpheus can, unless they're invited. Once someone crosses your threshold, and this is all over the Old Testament, you're in covenant with the homeowner. You're in a binding covenant. And there's more to it. They've slaughtered an animal and they've painted the blood on the door, and you've come into a covenant with them. You're now a part of that family. So when Neo crosses the threshold, he's now in covenant with that oracle. And then what do we see as soon as he gets into her apartment? They go into the kitchen and everything's green. because he's in the astral realm. Same thing with Wizard of Oz, the Emerald City. And you see the astral imagery in the books more than you see it in the movie. And a lot of people don't know this. Wizard of Oz, it was one movie, but the actual book series, there was like 15 books in that. It was an entire series of books. So there's massive amounts to the Oz world that the average person doesn't know about. The Oz character is fleshed out much more. And likewise in there, Dorothy doesn't get to the Emerald City until something happens first. She falls asleep in a poppy field. So if you know anything about opium or opioids, the reason she fell asleep and woke up so groggy is because the opioids, the psychedelic, which a lot of people take to have these experiences, they do the ayahuasca or they do the mushrooms, they do the psychedelics, or you got the kids on TikTok swigging back the Benadryl because they want to see the Hat Man, right? So basically, what is being said here is that Dorothy gets high on opioids and she wakes up groggy because when you're in a disembodied state in the astral realm, everything's in a different frequency. The voices sound different. Things echo. It's harder you're slogging through it. She's in a different dimension. That's why she's yawning and we just think she woke up and, oh, there it is. But no, so a lot of these movies, and Mario, you mentioned the Nightmare on Elm Street series earlier. That is a modern personification of the Hat Man there. The Hat Man is a little bit of an unusual character. He's not quite the same as the others. I think it's interesting, guys, and I think it started with Wes Craven. In modern depictions, there was some Netflix series, guys, and everybody and their mother was telling me I should see it, but I don't have Netflix, so I think I saw the first episode or two or whatever over at a friend's house. I want to say the name of it was Fear, but I don't know if that's what it was. But it had a sleep paralysis character in it. And what I thought was so fascinating about the way they depicted the sleep paralysis demon in that series and the way they depicted Freddy Krueger was they were funny. They had senses of humor. They were sarcastic. You as a viewer were laughing. Freddy had all those corny puns and play on words and stuff. And it's just another way that they're kind of gaslighting ritual abuse victims and trauma-based mind control victims is, they're watching all these films with all these triggers in it, and the demons and the entities that are represented in these movies are just lovable characters to the viewers. Everybody thinks that they're so fun and funny and they got such a sense of humor. And the Hat Man is very often associated with childhood. Again, there's always outliers. I've talked to people who see the Hat Man in adulthood. But what's odd about the Hat Man is most people see him wide awake. They're not asleep when they see him. They'll see him like in the hallway of the house and things. The Hat Man can and does speak, but a lot of times he doesn't. He just stares. A lot of times the Hat Man is accompanied by or associated with people not with sleep paralysis, but with night terrors, which is a different thing. A lot of times night terrors is associated with bedwetting and sleepwalking. And another thing that is very frequently associated with kids who have night terrors, sleepwalking, and bedwetting who see the Hat Man is there's some sort of molestation or sexual abuse going on. So parents in Christian homes, all of a sudden your kid who loves Sunday school is having night terrors and sleepwalking and wetting the bed and telling you about the monsters. You better pay attention to that. That's not just because they watched Monsters, Inc. There's something, if you've got all 4 of those things going on, they're afraid to go to bed. You catch them in their room at 2 a.m. awake with the light on. You've got to pay attention to this stuff, parents. Not if no kid wants to go to bed, right? I'm talking about all of these things that play at the same time. And the Wes Craven series in the 80s, they portray Freddy as a child killer. He was just a serial killer. And all the parents got ganged up on him and took the law into their own hands and killed him, right?
Great.
There was a reboot in the 2000s. Wes Craven didn't do it, and I did not see it, but I've read about it. In the reboot, they don't overtly say it, but if you're paying attention to the scenery and the props, they're making it abundantly clear that Freddy wasn't just a child killer, but that he was molesting these children as well. So he was a P word that we can't always say depending on your platform. So I won't say it, but we all know what we're talking about. Now, this upset the fandom so much that if you go onto fandoms, there's people having arguments. No. For like they're trying to make him out to be a nice guy. No, he just murders children. Like, it's not that bad. But if you look at crime reports, statistically, there's not too many men who kill children that aren't also doing the other. There's not too many examples in crime records where men are just going around killing children. They're usually killing children to cover up a different crime. So it's fascinating to me that they know that Freddy, the dream master, right? That he should wear a hat and he should torment children, and that there was more going on there behind the scenes, right? Even his striped shirt, you guys, even though it's red and green striped, a lot of people who do psychedelics, they have a different experience in the astral realm. They're more in they call it the fractal realm instead of the astral realm. And there's a lot of geometric shapes. There's a lot of black and white checkerboards, black and white stripes. Another example of a fractal entity is the movie Beetlejuice. You've got the guy in the black and white striped suit. Now, they spell it differently. The movie spells it Beetlejuice, but the real word, I think it's German, and it's spelled differently. It's like Baetleujuz. It's spelled very differently, like Beetlejuice. It's different. It's an actual demon, and in the movie, it was that he wanted to marry Winona Ryder, and she's in the red wedding gown. Well, the red wedding gown is an occult ritual. It's a bride of Satan ritual where they put these usually 8-year-old girls in red dresses, and they're betrothed to Satan or they're betrothed to a demon. And it's not because the demon fell in love with them and wants to marry them. It is all the things you think it's going to be, right? And so they're branding all this stuff as kids' movies, Wizard of Oz and Beetlejuice, and it's funny and whimsical. Beetlejuice, he's so funny. It's just crazy, guys. It's crazy. These are not children's movies. They are telling you what's going on. If you can put the biblical goggles on and understand that this isn't entertainment. I've said this before. I'll say it now. If you want the gospel of Jesus Christ, find yourself a good church. If you want the gospel of the Watchers and the Nephilim, and Satan, go to the movie theater. They're not just movies. If you really break down what's going on in these DC and Marvel comic movies, it's the gospel from the other guy's perspective.
Mm.
It's the gospel told from the enemy's perspective. No, we're going to come down and we're going to save humanity, and you're going to be in awe of us because we have all these powers. It's the gospel from the enemy's perspective. And we're going out and we're not only being entertained and lulled to sleep by it, but there's godly men out there buying figurines and tattooing these satanic symbols of the Ubermensch, like on their arms, and idolizing these things and spending thousands of dollars on costumes. And these are Nephilim, guys.
I have a question about, and to that point too. I mean, it could relate to that. Um, a question came up as we were talking about this, but do you feel like, is it all a fear-based platform? I know demons, heard it before. They can shift and morph into more angelic or nicer beings, but maybe as a luring tactic at first to come in as comfort and as being funny or sense of humor, things like that. How long do you think that would stay, or do they just kind of keep that and knowing they got somebody on the hook with that? Or is it primary? It sounds like it's primarily fear based, but just curious on the other side of that coin.
Yeah. Okay, Chris, that's a great question. I've been doing these podcasts for 3-4 years now. I've never been asked that question. I love this. So no, it absolutely is not primarily fear-based. And let me tell you my theory. Because guys, it doesn't matter if I wrote a book on this. I'm not an expert on this. I have a little tip of the iceberg figured out, but if I was to look under the water, there is a continent more of information on this stuff that I have yet to discover. So here's a theory. This astral realm is an invite-only party. The problem is there's a whole bunch of people who haven't been invited that know how to sneak in. So they have to figure out how to get rid of the people that aren't useful to them or that they don't want or who aren't part of the family, right? So you've got people out there who watch a bunch of YouTube videos and they teach themselves how to astral project, but they are not part of the bloodline. So they are not going to share their secrets with that person. So they might entertain that person or scare that person just to get them to like, I'm not doing that anymore. So some of the people getting scared, they're getting the freak show because they don't belong up there and the entities up there have no use for them. And they're scaring them away to just get them out. Oh, I astral projected once. I'm never doing that again. It was so scary. Then you've got people who do have an invite, but don't want the invite. And so aggressive force is used to scare them into, you better behave. Now, if you continue to not comply, then you're going to get the fear stuff because now they're retaliating because you're not, following the agenda. So here's the deal. There are some people that get deeply enmeshed into this lucid dreaming and astral projecting or reality shifting or whatever. And in some cases, they don't ever figure out what's really going on. Like, oh my gosh, these are demons, these are entities, these are scary, these aren't my friend. Because people who don't know what they're doing, who dabble with this stuff, they kind of get taken care of on their own because they self-destruct. Because you really can't do this if you don't know what you're you're messing with. Even on the socials where young kids who call themselves shifters talk about it, they'll even flat out say, you got to be careful. If you don't know what you're doing, you can get mentally ill. Like, you can snap. They'll tell you flat out, this isn't something to mess with. So here's the deal. If you have some sort of a gift, if you have what they're looking for, you're their MO. I'm talking a lot of the people that are pulled into the astral or the simulations or the mall world their whole lives. We've got trauma, like we've already talked about. We have usually really empathetic people. They usually love animals. They're very empathetic to people who are hurt. They're people that want to go into like nursing or some sort of care. They're very artistic and creative. You've got a lot of like musicians or writers or people that are quiet. They're introverted. They get a lot of attention and they have a lot of friends, but they don't necessarily seek it out or want it. They're sort of uncomfortable with it. They're not looking for a lot of attention. They usually have high IQs. A vast majority of people who have been in the mall world numerous times are graduates of the GATE program who went through these higher education programs in school. So you've got an MO. So what they'll do is if you fit their MO, and if you're of the bloodline, you usually kind of have to be of one of the bloodlines. If you fit the MO, they're going to either lure you into learning to astral project, or they're going to abduct you and they're going to bring you into the astral. If you're one of the people that they want, and you have the gifts that they want, and you are useful and compliant to the agenda, you're not asking questions, you're not stirring up trouble, you're not whistleblowing, you're not calling on the name of Jesus and interrupting all their plans and, out here writing books on it. Like, if you are compliant and your gifts are useful. So let's say you go up there and you get trained in deep levels of theosophy or New Age, because you have that right skill set, you have the creativity, you have the people trust you, so you can influence other people, you're intelligent, you're useful to them. You're going to go on YouTube and you're going to get 300,000 followers when you talk about all this mystical stuff and people get intrigued. You're going to write the book. You're going to do the artwork. You're going to make the beautiful rock music that people want to listen to. And then they're going to love you and they're going to get all the guitar magazines and then they're going to read about your weird religion. And then because they love and admire you, then they want to delve into the religion. And so if you're useful, and what makes the astral agenda different than the UFO agenda, everybody talks about the cloning and the reproduction and the babies and the experiments and the medical tables with the people that are abducted by the UFOs. The people abducted into the astral, there's a different agenda. You're not being sought out for your genetics. You're being sought out for your intellect, because you are going to be groomed in the astral. You're going to learn that religion. And then you are going to use all those gifts in the real waking world to influence and change culture. And you're going to get into the scientific world, the medical world, the literary world, the music world, the seminaries. And you are going to slowly and subtly morph the culture away from the image of God and into the image of the coming Antichrist, the beast system. They need people to prepare us for the coming kingdom.
That makes
their
sense.
their coming kingdom. So it's not always fear-based. And the reason why some people can follow New Age for 20, 30, 40 years and never see through it is because they're useful. They have a
Mhm.
gift and they are so brainwashed. And I don't mean that as an insult, because I will remind you the people that they can most effectively use are people who have come through trauma like you would never imagine.
Yeah.
And so we empathize for these people because they're being used. And so the reason why some people see through it so quickly and some people don't is it depends on how compliant and how useful you are to them. If you're compliant and you're useful, they will never take that mask off. You will always see the angel of light and be filled with love, and you'll get all sorts of knowledge, and you're going to get your silver play button, and you're going to have all of these gifts. But the gifts come with massive price tags.
Yeah.
And when you cease to be useful, they will be done with you.
Interesting on the, I mean, I would always think, and maybe it's more of a generalization, but to think that they're picky, and it makes complete sense the way you just talked about it. Like, I would think they're just forming an army and they'll take anybody. And, which brings me to the thought of the importance of sharing the gospel of Christ, because you just don't know who, I mean, I'm just trying to imagine when you said earlier about, a big part of it is rejection, or when you have to invite them in and then they have to invite you, that 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 give and take there. Um, if they're being rejected by this world and that world, I mean,
Yes.
that's got to be something fierce in there, in their
Yeah.
psyche, in their spiritual body embodiment, or their just as a person in general, to know, like, man, I didn't even make that cut. Like, this sucks. So I
Yes.
think for us as Christians to make sure that we not only pray for that discernment to say who can I talk to, who should I talk to, and hope this, and pray that the Holy Spirit will guide us to those people, but I think never wasting an opportunity to maybe invite them to church or invite them in to this spiritual
Yeah. That's
piece.
that is such a great point. Like the heaping the rejection upon rejection. When it, for those listening, if you run into people that start slowly confiding in you, you meet a new friend, coworker, neighbor, and as you build relationship, they start trusting you and sharing, maybe that they're steeped in this new age stuff or whatever. Instead of condemning them and showing them all the Bible verses about divination and witchcraft and how they're going to burn in hell, uh, the tactic that you really should take is you need to understand that what lured them in is that they're told by these entities that they're chosen. They're the chosen ones. And we see this in the films. We see it in The Matrix. Neo's the one. We see it in the M. Night Shyamalan movie Split. Those
Yeah.
who are torn they're chosen, right? These chosen ones. The occult, when they do ritual abuse, they're told that they're the chosen ones. Russ Dizdar used to talk about it. Survivors of ritual abuse and satanic ritual abuse, they are groomed to believe that all the torment that they're going through will be worth it because they're chosen. And when you have been devalued and abandoned and rejected and abused by every adult you trusted, and you have no one, and you find out that everyone in your life is a handler and they're only there because they've been assigned to be there, and no one's ever genuinely found value in you or loved you, you're going to fall for someone angelic telling you you're chosen. So our approach with these people through scripture is to tell them, you are right. You have been chosen. And you take them to the book of First Peter. You're a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a people of his own possession. You will rule and reign with Jesus Christ. You were created in his image. You were fearfully and wonderfully made. You were knit together in your mother's womb. He was there with you in the secret place, planning your life. He had so many hopes and dreams for you, and he still does. He's chosen you. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. He was rejected so that we don't ever have to be rejected. This is how you appeal to them. You don't appeal to them by condemning them for being deceived. You appeal to them by, you are chosen, but
Mhm.
not by the scum of the earth. You've been
Yeah.
chosen by the Creator who loves you and it is plans for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future, who will restore to you all the years that the moths have eaten, who can heal and who can bring peace that passes human understanding into your heart, soul, mind, and body. And let me tell you what's waiting at the end of the line with astral projection. When you are constantly in a state of unhealed trauma, and you've got all that cortisol going off in your body because you're in a high adrenaline state all the time, you're in survivor mode, you're for decades, and you're now traversing the boundary of dimensions into, now you're leaving your first estate. The Watchers were put into the abyss for leaving their first estate. We're leaving our first estate when we go into the astral. And when you are over there and you're crossing those thresholds and you're covenanting with and communing with and loving and trusting these enemies of your own soul, let me tell you about some secular scientific research that has come out recently. This isn't Christian research. They are finding now that 85% of people who claim they have gone through UFO abductions scenarios their whole life, and bear in mind, whether they realize it or not, included in that group are people who have sleep paralysis, who are being pulled into the astral, and who have been ritually abused. Because a lot of that stuff, you've got more than one of them going on. 85% of those people, once they get into their 40s and 50s, develop numerous debilitating autoimmune diseases, which in many cases are parasitic, and the parasites are pretty immune to the little stupid stuff you buy over the counter. And a lot of those things, like Hashimoto's and some of these other things, if left unchecked or unhealed, they lead to dozens of different kinds of cancer. These entities that are appearing to you as angels are draining your life force. They are taking your emotional energy, your spiritual energy, your physical energy, and you're literally going to get physically sick. And I had to deal with this, guys. I went from a really healthy person, and right around the time I turned 40, I got really sick. And I had 6 autoimmune diseases. I was told there was no cure for any of them. I was told that one of them was Hashimoto's and that I could have this ridiculously horrible, gross, disgusting elimination diet the rest of my life, $300 to $500 worth of supplements every month. And if I maintained that perfectly, I could put off one of the 17 types of cancer that I would die from. Okay. So, and that was a Christian naturopath. Okay. That wasn't a white lab coat, that was a Christian naturopath telling me that there's no cure for any of this stuff. And I lived with rosacea, H. pylori, chronic fatigue, leaky gut, celiac, and Hashimoto's for 15 years. My hair was falling out. I was sweating all the time. My face was filled with rosacea pustules. I couldn't lose weight. I was gaining tons of weight. I would bloat every time I ate. I was moody. I had depression. I had anxiety. And I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. I didn't know what was going on. And a year and a half ago, completely unrelated, I have a dear friend, and I mean, she is a ball of fire, ex-LAPD, ex-military, and she said, let's start fasting. And I was pretty freaked out over that idea because I don't like going without food any more than anybody else, right? And so I'm like, okay, thinking we're going to go a day without food. Like, okay. And I was super addicted to Diet Coke at the time. So I was not looking forward to this. I'm like, I got to go a day without Diet Coke. She's like, no, Vic. No, we're doing an 8-day fast. And I was like, what? And I was terrified. I had anxiety. Well, because I had autoimmune, I was bedridden almost the whole 8 days. I had these horrible leg cramps, and I was soaking in Epsom salts, and I was in agony. I made it through the 8 days, and I was so put off of fasting that I didn't fast again, I think, for another 4 or 5 years. And my same friend came back to me, and she said, I'm going to fast for your autoimmune disease. I'm like, yeah, okay. I had no hope. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And again, I thought she was going to just do like a little 24 hours or whatever. And she ends up telling me that she fasted 10 days for me. And I wasn't healed. Everything was still going on. But for some reason, I went back to the naturopath and I got blood work done. And even though I was still sick and I was still overweight and there was no evidence I was healed, I got the blood work done. And the doctor called me and he said, you do not have celiac. You do not have Hashimoto's. Your thyroid tested totally normal. You don't have any gluten allergies. He wrote all of them off. So now I'm saying to the Lord, what's going on? So what I did is I just started praising and thanking him. And after a few days of praising and thanking him, I thought, if my friend could selflessly go 10 days without eating for me to be healed, then I have to pay it forward. I got to find someone who's sick and I got to do that for them. So I found someone in my life who was terminal, and I went 10 days. I was 5 days into the fast, and I was fine, guys, because by day 4, you hit your stride. I was totally fine. I could have done the 10 days fine, but I woke up on day 6, and the Holy Spirit very clearly in my head said, do the rest of the 5 days dry. I didn't know what that meant. So I called my friend and I said, do you know what that means? And she said, yeah. She goes, a dry fast means no water. And I'm thinking, well, that shouldn't be a big deal because when you have an empty stomach and you're pounding water, it doesn't feel good anyway. So, and I'm not a huge water drinker. So I'm like, oh, that shouldn't be a problem. I'm like, okay. I will tell you guys that there is no more voracious appetite in the world than thirst. I would rather go 40 days without food than 10 days without water. There is something about truly being thirsty. We don't know in America because we got something with us every second. We're always pounding something down our throats, right? In the middle of this dry fast, I was weak. I had brain fog. I was so weak I could barely walk. And by day 3 of it, everyone around me was saying, you've got to stop. You've got to drink. You've got to drink something. And I'm like, okay, you're right. And I woke up on day 4 and I was going to drink that water. And I had this cold glass of ice water. And I heard the Holy Spirit say, I said 5 days. And I said, Jesus, I'm not questioning you, but I'm just telling you, I think I'll die if I go 5 days. Like, I'm on my last.
Yeah.
Right.
And he didn't say, don't worry about it. Forget about it. He didn't say, don't worry about it. The thought that went through my head was, pray I sustain you. I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
ouch. So day 4 was the day I was going to quit. And before I get to my punchline, guys, and thank you for your patience, after 5 days of not having that water, I started realizing how much of Scripture talked about thirst. As a deer pants for the water, so my soul pants after thee. And I'm choking on my words here, guys, because the thought that I had, you guys, I would have given away every single thing I owned. I would have pledged every dime I make for the rest of my life. I would have given over my firstborn if I had one. There's nothing I wouldn't have given for one sip of water at that moment. And I realized this is how I'm supposed to feel for Jesus. I'm supposed to long for him as much as I want that sip of water. And I have never longed for him like this. I've never longed for anything like this in my life because it was such a guttural, desperate need at that point. And then I realized, hey, Jesus died thirsty. He said, I thirst, and that thirst was not quenched. He died thirsty. And so it was this horrifying and wonderful moment of realizing, now I know my assignment. I've been a Christian over 50 years, and now I know my assignment. This is how I am supposed to want Jesus.
Wow.
Amen.
So on day 4, guys, this is the day I was going to quit and start drinking water. What happened on day 4, because it was day 4 of the dry fast, but it was day 9 of the food fast. And unbeknownst to me, I am riddled with parasites. The same parasites that I took tests for 15 years that every doctor told me I didn't have and not to worry about. Jesus knew that it would take 10 days of fasting, 5 days dry, to expel parasites that healed all 6 autoimmune diseases in 10 days. 6 incurable autoimmune diseases, $300 to $500 worth of supplements, terrible diet for the rest of my life. There was like 30 things I could eat for the rest of my life. 10 days gone. So the reason I'm saying all that, and a lot of people are going to be, this is disjointed because this is about sleep paralysis. I am telling you that a lot of the autoimmune diseases that God-fearing people who love Jesus are currently dying of and going financially broke of, it is the result of a whole bunch of unresolved trauma, people we haven't forgiven, amends we haven't made, not taking fasting seriously. There's a verse in Deuteronomy. I held Jesus to this for 9 months. It was 9 months before I healed, but I came across a verse in Deuteronomy, and it said, if you walk in covenant with me, says the Lord, the diseases of Egypt will not fall on you. And I'm like, why have all these diseases fell on me? Either Jesus doesn't keep his promises, or I'm not really walking in covenant. And that's really when I figured out that there was a difference between praying a prayer, becoming a Christian, and going to church, and walking in covenant. When Jesus tells us to walk in covenant with him, and I'm not talking about Torah observance and you got to wear tzitzits and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about we better figure out what it means, because there's nothing in the Bible that says you better become a Christian or you better pray a prayer or you better keep going to church. It tells us over and over and over and over again to walk in covenant with him. And we can't do that if we don't know what it means. And we can't do that if we're in covenant with his enemies. And that's what this sleep paralysis agenda is. It's getting us duped and reeled into these covenants, and the covenants can be annulled, and the diseases can be healed, and the sleep paralysis can go away. It's not a matter of finding the right deliverance minister or the right prayer to print off the internet to pray or the right stuff in your house to throw away. It's about how bad do you want it? And how bad do you want Jesus? Because if you want him as bad as a deer pants for water, you're going to be healed.
Man, that's great.
That's good.
Vicki, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
This was incredible. I think, you just highlighted the important thing of the podcast is that things are more spiritual than what we think they are.
Yeah.
And bringing awareness, especially with concerns regarding sleep paralysis, parents that have kids that are experiencing this. You put a lot of context, a lot of things for us to not just consider, but to put into practice. And I thank you for coming on the show. How do people get in touch with you? Do you have a website?
Yep. That's the easiest place to find me, VickiJoyAnderson.com. And that's Vicki just with an I, Vicki. Anything else you possibly could want is going to be right there pretty much on the homepage. Links to all of my socials, emails, all the podcasts I'm on, I put up there, events that I'm speaking at. There's also on the contact page, if you're suffering from this stuff, if you've had sleep paralysis your whole life, or even recently, if you don't know what it is, you don't have the kind of pastor you can confide this stuff in, no one's going to believe you, you've never talked about it. Or if you're suffering from anything like paranormal, spiritual warfare, anything like that, that if your church doesn't want to touch it, there is a link on there to a Calendly site, and there's a calendar, and I have 40-minute Zoom calls that I do all day every Thursday. You can sign up for a free 40-minute Zoom call. It's just a one-time shot, guys. I'm not a counselor. I don't do long-term counseling or anything like that. And I'm usually booked a couple months in advance. I think I'm kind of towards the end of December now. But if you want to sign up for a 40-minute Zoom call, you can get on there with me and one of my colleagues, and we will talk with you, and we will pray with you, and we'll give you resources if there's further things that you need. And we would love to talk and pray with you if you don't have anyone to talk to these things about.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you very
Thank you so
much.
much,
Yeah.
Vicki.
Absolutely. And just to clear the air, Mario didn't watch all the Freddy Krueger movies in preparation for this podcast. So
Oh, no.
Didn't do it last night.
well, go ahead and stay on and we'll end the show. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.